When I think of good leadership, a couple of traits come to mind, and the first is care. If you're going to be a good leader, you got to care, and that doesn't mean you got to be some sappy, soupy, rainbow and unicorn type person, but it does mean you care enough about the people that you're leading to ask questions, to get close enough to know what motivates and inspires them. And I think the next characteristic I often refer to would be ego. So if you want to lead people and lead them in a way that inspires them, provides them fulfillment, allows them to make an impact, you got to be vulnerable enough to set your ego aside, which is something that a lot of leaders struggle with.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. What is up, everybody? Mike Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. And I have an exciting one for you guys today. I'm joined by author, entrepreneur, leader, business executive, speaker, and among many other things, just general all-around badass, Kyle McDowell, who's going to talk to us about leadership. He's ran teams of as much as 15,000 people, among many other things that we're going to learn about today. So welcome, Kyle.
Hey, Mike, man, it's great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
So before we even get started, you were just telling me one of your best friends is tied to the painting space. So just like walk me through kind of your experience there and your understanding of the painting business and the challenges that we go through.
Yeah, and that's what I was really excited to join you today because of that context and experience I have. So one of my lifelong friends, guy I grew up with, known him for probably 30 years. His dad started a commercial painting company before we were even born. And my buddy ended up taking over that company. He now runs it day to day. And, me being a corporate America guy, always having a W-2 inside of really massive organizations, it was always both educational and sometimes, always interesting, but always educational as well. The juxtaposition of kind of big corporate world, and then a lot of the similarities that he and I would discuss. But by and large, the challenges that he had with growing his company to what it is today, which I believe is a fairly substantial size now. It was a fun journey to watch him and fun to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. So how did you end up in this spot you are today, writing a book about leadership? What gives you the right?
Yeah. Hey, that's a question I ask myself a lot. Yeah. So I spent nearly 30 years in corporate America, and like so many, and I'm sure most in your audience, began my work life with a lot of hope and optimism and desire to do big things and have an impact. And it was from a very small cubicle that I began my journey. And if you fast forward some 28 years later, by the time I exited corporate America in 2019, I'd led tens of thousands of employees. I ran the world's largest mail order pharmacy at one time, filling 53 million prescriptions a year. I ran the world's largest health insurance enrollment operations for a time, had 14,000 employees there. So I don't know that gives me the right, but I think it gives me the experience. And if nothing else, experience has taught me that there are many, many right ways to do things. And there are also a hell of a lot of wrong ways to approach leadership and how to galvanize a team for a cause bigger than any one individual is kind of where I made my living, and it's my passion.
Yeah. What do you think? What does good leadership look like? What are we talking about here?
So I think that when I think of good leadership, a couple of traits come to mind, and the first is care. If you're going to be a good leader, you got to care. And that doesn't mean you got to be some sappy, soupy, rainbow and unicorn type person, but it does mean you care enough about the people that you're leading to ask questions, to get close enough to know what motivates and inspires them. And I think the next characteristic I often refer to would be ego. So if you want to lead people and lead them in a way that inspires them, provides them fulfillment, allows them to make an impact, you got to be vulnerable enough to set your ego aside, which is something that a lot of leaders struggle with. Set that ego aside because there's this thing that I refer to as the leadership gap. It's where the boss puts himself or herself on a pedestal, kind of in a place that the employee can't relate to them. And it's kind of like, take my orders. If I catch you doing something, I'm going to let you know, but otherwise you won't hear from me. So I think if we can lower that ego and be open to operating on a level playing field and show that you are actually interested in the growth and development of those around you, not just your own, a leader you will become.
Mm-hmm. So like stepping out of your team's way to solve problems the way that they think they should be solved, and not necessarily dictating the minutia of how you think it should be solved.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's how I approach it. Now, let me be really clear. The iron fist in the dictatorial way can work. As a matter of fact, I led that way the first 20 plus years of my career. It's not sustainable. And you think you're surrounded by people that respect you, but they actually fear you. And that's not the sign of trust. So you said it very well. It's enabling your people to do what they got to do to get the job done, get out of the way, and let them do what you hired them to do.
So how do you deal with mistakes that are inevitably going to happen, along letting them have that type of freedom?
I love mistakes. I think mistakes are an opportunity for improvement. It's an opportunity for us to get better than we were yesterday, learn something in the process. The foundation of my book is these 10 principles that I created. They're called the 10 we's. And every one of the sentences, every one of the principles starts with the word we. And it's ironic you asked that question, because we number 6 is we own our mistakes. I just happen to believe when we are open and transparent about the mistakes that we made, human nature kicks in, and the care that your team has for you, the boss, theoretically, the leader should have for you. They're going to be there to extend a hand, pick you up, learn from that lesson, and push you on to the next one. But the challenge really is where I've found big problems result from tiny kind of issues or small mistakes is when people cover them up. Covering up the mistake will never give you the leadership or the learning opportunity, rather, that is required to not repeat those same mistakes. I often say, Mike, I don't think we're judged by our mistakes. I really don't believe most people are judged by their mistakes. We're judged by how quickly we remedy the mistake and if the mistake is repeated, because the error is human. So I don't like to create an environment where I expect people to be perfect. I like people in my organizations and my teams to say, man, I blew it, without fear of retribution from me.
Mm-hmm. So I have an example. So earlier this morning, I was doing a coaching call. We had about 35 clients on. We do a Friday morning office hours with me, and one of my clients is struggling to get away from the job site because they're painting cabinets, okay, and she has some painters, but she feels like she has to be there because this one time a couple weeks ago she tried leaving and the painters ended up making a big mistake, and she came back and bailed them out, took over, got the job done the right way, sent the crew to a different job, and just like fixed their mistake. Was the problem solver. So how can she go from that, not being able to trust her team, like a mistake happened, she had to fix it, to this type of leader where you like embrace the mistake as a learning opportunity?
Yeah, well, I think it's a really great example of how she established herself as someone that cared enough to actually get in, get the work done. Now, I'm not naive. I'm sure she wasn't thrilled with that, but I think the example that she set and the message that she sends is, I'm here for you right now. These mistakes that you made, we can't have this happen again, right? We need to understand what happened, learn from these mistakes. I'm going to finish this because I got to get this job done because this client is incredibly important to us. But I got to let you know, this is not who we are. This is not the product that we deliver, the service that we deliver. Do you understand the mistake? And let's make sure that expectations are set that similar mistake won't happen again. Depending on how egregious the mistake is, we got to be clear that, some things are termination type things, right? So, in today's workforce, we want to be really careful to make sure we keep the right folks around as long as we can, because it's hard to find good help. But I think it's important that she showed them, I'm here to fix it, help you fix it. I'm not going to beat you over the head with it, but it can't happen again.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever played chess?
I've never been into chess. No.
Okay, so last year, actually after COVID, during COVID, I got into chess and I started chess lessons. And one of the things that my coach taught me, he's like, exactly what you just said. It's okay to make a mistake, but you can't make the same mistake more than once. And that's how you improve, like specifically at chess, because like very objective of how good you are at chess, because you have a rating. You play against people of a similar rating and you gain points every single time or lose points every time. Very objective. So if you're making the same mistake over and over, you're never going to get a higher rating. You might be stuck at 1,000, ELO score forever. But if you stop making those, you only make each one of those mistakes once, like then you find a different mistake that's a little more complicated, and then you only make that one once. So it's about like building, and then that's how you ultimately get better. At chess is just not repeating the same mistake twice.
Hey man, it's no coincidence that things like artificial intelligence. I mean, artificial intelligence is essentially a series of infinite, in most scenarios, infinite options, and the intelligence part comes from ruling out many of those options. And the only way to rule out those options is have tried them and failed. It's like your GPS or the Maps app on your phone. It's like it knows to get from point A to point B, there are an infinite number of ways to get there, but it rules out ways because it knows those are not the most efficient ways. And that's, very similar to what you're talking about in chess. You make the mistake, you learn from it to not allow those bigger mistakes to become a real problem.
Well, and actually on your point of AI, how Google, they had DeepMind, which was like the best chess computer ever, how it ended up teaching itself is it played simulated games against each other at like an incredible rate, like 1,000 games a minute. And it would just play against itself over and over and over again. And it would make so many mistakes over until it stopped making mistakes. And then it's all of a sudden, like within a day, it got as good as a human. And then within 2 days, because it had played millions of games against itself by this time, it was an order of magnitude better than the best chess player in the world. And then it just keeps on getting better. Yeah. And then so
gathering data, right? Through every game, gathering data points, right?
The difference between a computer, though, is that it remembers every single mistake forever. Whereas humans are a little more fallible than that.
We choose to forget some, that's for sure.
Yeah. So mistakes of a team, I don't know if you would ever call them subordinates, but of a leader's team are, in fact, the mistakes of the leader. Where's the accountability line drawn?
The accountability line is drawn and starts with conversations about expectations. In my experience, that's where a lot of leaders fail is setting the appropriate expectations, crystal clear expectations. Here's what we are here to deliver, who's on point to deliver that, and by when is that going to be delivered. So when those expectations are set, the accountability is handed over to the person responsible for delivering the work. I think the accountability line begins with the leader setting those expectations, and there can be no ambiguity. Once the expectations are set, we are crystal clear on who is delivering what and by when. That accountability now sits with that who that the work was assigned.
I guess what I'm kind of saying is, like, if one of my employees makes a mistake, like, okay, it was an expectation issue, was it a training issue, or was it just a general mistake of the employee? Maybe it was a hiring issue, like back, 10 steps back, it was the wrong person, the wrong seat. So like, ultimately, do you believe that every, incident is, does boil down to some fault in leadership?
No, I don't think so at all, because we're talking about humans, and humans are going to make mistakes. So the best leader in the world can spell out the best process in the world, and there can be an absolute alignment on who's on point to deliver what and by when, but that doesn't mean we're not perfect. So mistakes are going to happen. And that's why they're called mistakes.
Back to the like extreme ownership, if you've ever read that book, right? Like,
yeah,
just
of course,
extreme ownership.
Yeah. Now there's a difference between accountability and responsibility. So if I am on a team and I've botched something, made a mistake, I'm accountable for that. Am I responsible for the actual finish line of where we're trying to get? I think that's up for the leader to decide. So when the mistake is made, I'm accountable for that. You hold me accountable for that, but the leader is still responsible for getting the work done. That's why we have leaders.
So in your book, you say you have the 10 W's. How did you describe them? What do you call them?
The 10 W's. That's
10
exactly
W's. Okay.
Yep.
Which one of the W's? Because we don't have a time to go into all of them in probably as much depth as I would like. But which one of the W's do you think would be most applicable for like a small business owner that you're feeling inspired to kind of get into today?
My favorite of all of the principles is we number 8, and that's we challenge each other. And this was born out of what I saw for countless years that the only person allowed to issue challenges to the rest of the team or even be critical of anyone on the team was the boss, which is just the math says when you have one person who's the only one allowed to challenge a group of people, there's no way you're going to bring the best out of every single person on that team. So challenges, in my opinion, should come from team member to team member. Most importantly, the leader should be open to receiving challenges from the team. And that's the ego and vulnerability part I talked about earlier, right? And by the way, I should note, there is a rule. Challenges must be grounded in either data or experience. So an example in the painter world is, we go out on a job site, the boss and a couple of painters, and the boss says, that's a level 3. Here's the rollers that we brought. You guys get to work. Well, perhaps one of those painters has an experience in this building, understanding the intricacies of that drywall and how that roller is not going to work on that drywall. Obviously, I'm not a painting
Sure.
expert.
Yeah. No, it's tracking right now. You're doing all right.
So his experience says, boss, this is not going to work. We're going to waste paint. It's just not going to work for whatever reason. That's an experiential data point that the boss should listen to that challenge instead of just saying, nope, I'm the boss. Let's move forward. I know better. So I think every organization, every team for that matter, that's open to having challenges be a part of their daily vernacular and something that they're actually proud of, better results come. And the best solution really typically is what is delivered.
Mm-hmm. So there's the experiential challenge, and then the other one was
data.
The data challenge. So what would be an example of that?
So let's pretend we're doing a product launch, and someone on the team says, I was with another organization that launched a similar product, and the amount of spend that we put on Amazon for our marketing was X and the return was Y. Okay, the company that we're in now, we're about to do a similar product launch and we're about to spend similar dollars, but we have an expectation that the return on that expense is going to be higher. The woman who had the job experience at the previous company with that other product launch says, your math is wrong. So here's the data that proves that math, because my company invested X and got Y back. You're trying to invest X and get Y plus. It doesn't work. Here's the data to tell you that we should not assume this type of investment would return that kind of return.
Mm-hmm. And what type of challenges would not fall into one of those categories that you would deem like an improper challenge?
Anything that's not backed by data or experience, otherwise known as an opinion.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
so, and that's where, by the way, we number 9 is we embrace challenge. You can't have we number 8 without we number 9, but it's not productive. It's not healthy. It doesn't create any type of positive environment for someone to say, well, I just don't like the brand of that roller. Well, that's your opinion. That's your opinion. If you can tell me why you don't like that brand of that roller, because your experience says it's inferior in some ways, or it doesn't have the same shelf life, or whatever the right scenario is, but just to say, I don't like it. Opinions are not that important, candidly, in a lot of business settings.
What's the phrase? Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got
one. When I'm on stage, I usually say, a challenge must be grounded in data or experience. Otherwise, it's just an opinion. And we all have one of those. And you know how the rest of this cliche goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly
well,
right.
We
And they all
say
stink.
whatever we want on this one.
Yeah. What you call it. Yeah. They stink.
Yeah. Cool. And then we embrace challenge. So we challenge, that makes sense. How does we embrace challenge kind of differ from just we challenge?
Well, it's the other side of the coin. So if you're going to be in an organization that prides itself on challenges being kind of part of our DNA, and we have a challenge-rich environment, the only way that works is if everyone else on the team has subscribed that challenges are okay, but they've also agreed that when I am challenged, I got to listen for that data or experience. I'm not going to listen to opinion. I'm not obliged to do that. But if you're going to be on my team, be a part of this team, and subscribe to these principles, embracing challenge is what you got to do. So that means you have to assume it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a place of continuous improvement, not just being critical. But you can't have one without the other, because that's a recipe for real chaos.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, just changing gears a little bit, back when you were running a Fortune 10, being as a Fortune 10 executive leading, 15,000 people, which is more people than any one person should ever lead. What were speaking of challenges, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced, or that you thought was the most difficult part about that experience?
Wow. I think communication is where a lot of teams really miss their opportunity to be excellent. Assuming one member understands or knows what you're thinking, not being really explicit on direction. Again, back to establishing expectations is just critical. And I think, and this is, and I love that question, especially with the audience to whom we're speaking, in that, if we're dealing with, medium to smaller size companies, it's in many ways, I think there's a benefit there, because the larger the organization, the more ripe it is for toxicity and dysfunction. There are more places for people to hide. There are more opinions on how we should do things and not do things. That's where gridlock and real dysfunction comes in, because everybody has to have an opinion, and those opinions need to be considered. When you're talking about a team of 5, 10, or 20, even 50, considering those opinions is very, very different than considering the opinions of thousands.
Well, I mean, most people probably haven't met 15,000 people in their lives, right? Let alone.
Well, I certainly couldn't name all 15,000 of right.
There's no need to. So how many direct reports did you have that helped manage that team?
Well, so I've done it. Throughout my career, I've had multiple roles with multiple thousand person teams. The last one was 15,000, 14 before that. But in both cases, the two biggest roles where I had 14 and 15,000, I like to have 6 to 7 direct reports at max.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in one of those roles, when I joined, I had 9, and I had to kind of re-level the deck, not because I didn't think any of those people were important enough to report to me, but for me to be an effective leader, inspire them and motivate them and kind of get close to them and pull the best out of them. It's hard to do with 9 people. But that's a decision that everyone has to make. If you're in a position that you're allowed to decide how many people can report to you and you can level the organization, I happen to think fewer is better, because you can get closer and get more out.
Yeah. What is different about in the way that you lead when it comes to like multi-level leading, leading a director who's going to lead a manager, who's going to lead a crew lead, who's going to lead a team, versus just leading one person directly?
I love that question. The answer is there is no difference. Absolutely no difference. Whether I'm leading a team of 1, 5, 50, or 15,000, we're just talking about people. We're just talking about people, and how you resonate with them, how you connect with them, how you communicate to and with them. I just believe that it boils down to people. I've made a couple of changes throughout my career where I bounced from one industry to a different industry, and found myself a little nervous about that. But I always went back to, it's just about the people, man. If you can connect with people, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 100.
And like, what do you? I'm just trying to. I mean, I've never led a team that big, and even close, right? Like dozens is as big as my teams have kind of been. So, I'm very close with the people on my team, and I can name everyone and their kids and their spouses and all of that. So, like, do you ever feel any sort of like disconnect between, like, because in that level, you're dealing very much with, like, if you're steering a tanker ship, right? Like you make a little tweak, and maybe in like 6 months, you'll see a little bit of a movement.
That's right.
Right. So how do you manage those types of expectations when you're dealing with all these like leading metrics, lagging metrics, potentially weeks, months, or years until you see an impact?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that question. So for me, I always need to get as close as I can to those that I'm going to see and interact with the most, because there's got to be a level of trust that they're going to carry the message as if I was the one delivering it. Now, everybody's got their own style, so I'm not looking for robots and yes men, but I am looking for people that are buying into the principles that I espouse. They're buying into the culture of excellence that we're trying to create. So while their delivery can be wildly different than mine, the spirit of the delivery needs to be almost exactly the same. So whether I'm, got to get close. Now, that doesn't mean that you keep your head in the sky and your nose pointed up because you've got such a fancy title that you lose sight of what the front line is dealing with. As a matter of fact, I think every single leader needs to get really close to the folks at the very front line who are delivering the work, including me when I was leading 15,000 people. Every single time I visited a different location, I would spend time at the front line, shoulder to shoulder in a cubicle with people for a number of reasons. And that's probably a different conversation. But I think that, if nothing else, that allows a leader to understand as much as possible what's happening on the front line. I don't know the solutions to offer for an organization that big. I think I know, but I
Yeah.
know that I don't have all the answers. So I got to get close to those that do have the answers and give them an
Yeah.
opportunity to share. So now the long tail that you talked about with a problem, us trying to dig out or trying to show improvement. I'm a progress guy. So if the goal is X, and we are X minus, next month we need to be X minus a little less. Next month after that, got to be a little closer to X. So as long as we're trending and we see the trajectory of our progress trending towards a goal that we've established, I'm okay. It's when we are consistently missing a goal and or sliding backwards from that goal, that's when action's got to be taken and changes should be made.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about when it comes to some practical? So this podcast is all about practical tips, right? We want people to walk away with an action plan, and that action plan is going to be to get your book for sure, which we'll link below. So let me put you in the shoes of one of our listeners who I'm just gonna generic, not one person in particular, but say we're leading, 3 to 5 guys and girls, and maybe we have a production manager, someone who's kind of like, middle management, running, picking up paint, moving ladders around. But we have like people that just start, maybe like they're showing up late a little bit, they're slacking a little bit here, maybe they're not wearing their work shirt anymore. They're just not quite bought in as they used to be. Right. So like what type of steps as a leader can you do to like realign someone, or how do you diagnose that issue?
For me, it's not that complicated.
Because you wrote a book on it, dude. For those people, other people, it is complicated.
Well, I preface it because I think something happens to us, and it happened to me as well for many years, that when we put on the work shirt or put on the badge or put on the work hat or step in the office, we lose our humanness. And what I mean by that is when it happens a lot, people get promoted or they get hired into a position of authority, and then they take on these characteristics and these behavioral traits that are not authentic to who they are, not consistent with who they've always been. Because, in the scenario you just described, if that ego was gone and this facade that I feel I have to keep because I'm some important, all-knowing boss was not there, we're talking about two humans. And the person who noticed the other person is showing up late, maybe not wearing their work shirt, maybe not really giving their all, kind of half-assing it, you would say, dude, everything all right? You're not working up to the standard that you've established for yourself historically, not what I've established for you. Like, you had your work shirt on the last 2 weeks nonstop. I've had to catch you. I've mentioned it to you twice now. So there's something going on. I'm just trying to get at it. So can we talk about that? What's happening? But I think too often that doesn't happen because I need to come across boss-like, or I need to come across all-knowing or authoritative, instead of just asking, "What the heck's going on, man? Everything okay with you?" So that's how I would address it. Is be one human to another. I have a genuine question, perhaps concern about these things that are happening, and because at the end of the day, Mike, this, everybody's bringing some baggage to work. Everybody. Someone could be going through a divorce. They got a sick kid at home. Maybe they're having a hard time making ends meet. There are things that contribute to our behavior that a boss doesn't recognize, but a leader says, dude, I could tell you're going through something. You don't have to share the details. We still got some jobs to get done. We got work here, but I just need you to know I'm recognizing this, and this cannot persist. So let's talk about what's happening, or assure me it's not going to happen again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually funny. I had one of my clients, he had a painter who was just like not performing. He was crushing it for a while, and then all of a sudden, like I said, started showing up late and was like slacking a little bit. Was calling in sick a little bit. And I'm like, guys, like Mike, what do I do? Like, do I just fire him? He's such a good painter. He's just become so so inconsistent now and unreliable. He's like, what should I do? I'm like, well, have you like asked him what's going on? And he's like,
right.
No. I'm like, okay, well, go ask him and see what's going on with his life, and if there's anything that you can support with. And so the next day he comes back to me, he's like, man, I just had a 30-minute, sit down coffee with my painter. And it turns out that I can't remember what it was, but like his kid was sick and he was going through these problems and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, see, like,
Boom.
okay. And now the guy's like a rock star, like his best painter, because he's back on track and he was listened to and he was heard and he was able to like take some time and distance himself to get that space. But now he's bought in for good.
That's it. And by the way, the message that you send to the person that's struggling or dealing with something, if you frame it correctly, it's less about what you're not doing and more about that I care that you're not doing it. And when we know that we are valued as humans, when someone shows us that they value our contribution to something, what it is that we're doing, we're inspired, and we're inspired to continue to add that value. When we unplug from that and the boss doesn't approach it the way that this person did, that's in the story you just shared, they're not going to feel inspired, and you're not going to help pull them out of that situation that they're in, or at least get them to kind of block it out for a bit while we get some work done. So I just think it's important to just treat people with the humanity that you would hope that that you would be treated with if you were in a similar situation.
Mm-hmm. Now that's one part about like dealing with a challenge. Now, how would you, going the other way, going the forward direction, how do you motivate people? Like, what's your recommendation when it comes to actually like motivating people and getting them to work harder for your goals?
Well, they shouldn't be my goals. They need to be our goals. They need to be our goals. And I recognize that might sound a little unicorn and rainbow, but when you create a team that is aligned, it has shared incentives, and they have something to aspire to deliver that's bigger than themselves and be a part of something bigger than themselves, those goals become shared. Now, at the end of the day, I'm not naive. If I'm the owner, or the single person that's at the end of the day responsible for these bills getting paid, I get it. They are my goals, but to the degree possible to get the rest of the team bought into those goals is absolutely essential. How you motivate someone, asking and answering that question is like saying, how do you lose 10 pounds in 10 days? I don't know. That it's different for everybody.
Okay.
So everybody's going to respond and for example, I grew up playing football my whole life, and I was always more motivated by my coach grabbing me by the face mask, getting in my face, barking at me what I was not doing right. Now, that's not everybody responds to that. There are many people that need the hug instead of the lashing. So, but the only way to be effective at either is to know what the employee needs. And we started this whole conversation by saying you must care. I said that was the most important attribute. You have to care enough to know what resonates with someone to inspire and motivate them. If you just hire them as a number, send them out on a job, tell them to go get that done, you haven't inspired them. They got a job to do, so they're going to do it. Probably won't be sustained, or that approach can't be sustained, because after a while, people need to be treated a little differently. But motivating, inspiring is so unique to each individual. But the thing that is consistent is getting to know them to find that unique approach that they need.
Mm-hmm. So like asking them what motivates them, what they want, probably not just even in like the outcome, but what they want in like a day-to-day, what they want their job to look like, what they want their responsibilities to be, and this trying to match what you can provide them with what they want.
That's exactly right. You well said, really well said. At the end of the day, I think the boss, or I like to say the leader, really has two main responsibilities to be effective in their role. If you really boil it down to it's like brass tacks, the most simple of forms, they have two responsibilities. The first is to identify all the things that stand in the way of that employee being excellent. And that could be the type of schedule, the hours they can work. There's a million things that go into it, and it's very scenario driven. But the number one thing is, let me get that noise out of the way. Let me get the things out of the way and enable you to be the best that you can be, right? And then the second objective is to inspire and motivate them in spite of the things you could not remove, right? There are things that the boss or the best leaders in the world are never going to get out of the system that drive the employee crazy, the team member crazy. The important thing is that team member sees the boss trying to get out of the way, get the stuff that they can out of the way, enable them with the right equipment, the right materials, whatever they need to be their best, and then inspire them. The inspiring part is harder when you have more things that you can't get out of the way, but the more you can to enable them to be their best, it resonates with them, and they are, by definition, they're going to be inspired and motivated to deliver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary, right? If you
No.
know what motivates someone, it can be a non-monetary, like a very like a cost-effective thing. Like I remember when I was painting, a bunch of my painters wanted to go to this like barbecue backyard party thing, and it was like $40 a ticket or something like that. And I was like, hey, you guys finish this job in like such and such a time, I'm buy you guys all tickets for this barbecue. And they came in and they demolished the job. Like they got it done way faster, and they were so we gave them these tickets. It cost me like what, $200 for all these tickets, and they were stoked. They were
Right?
way more excited than if I were to give them $40 each.
Dude, Glassdoor partnered with MIT to do a study of trying to this is back during the Great Resignation, so 2-3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. The goal of the study was to determine why people left their roles during this finite period of time. They analyzed 30 million online profiles on Glassdoor. 30 million.
It's a lot of profiles.
Right. And to try to understand the number one or the top drivers why people leave their jobs. Number one was toxic work culture, and money showed up at like 15. So you said it. It's rarely money. Now, sometimes it is. Let's not be naive. Sometimes people are underpaid, especially according to what the market says in their geography. But more often than not, there are many, many things that drive people to leave their job and drive them to not deliver their best. And it usually is not money.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What was the hardest lesson that you ever learned as a leader?
Learning and being comfortable to ask for help. So at one point in my career, I led about, this is back 2009, 2010. I had a team of about 3,000 people around the world at that point. And I had a peer who led another 2,000 or so people. And he left the organization. And I was asked to assume his role while the search was on to bring somebody new in. And I had this feeling that if I really delivered and worked really hard and proved that I was as good as I thought I was, I'd be able to absorb both functions, get a big raise, big title increase, and just kind of continue to grow my leadership footprint, if you will. Well, I was so arrogant that although it was a brand new domain for me, I never asked for help. I thought I could brute force my way through it, kind of motivate those that needed it, fire those that weren't on board, and just power my way through. So I didn't get that job on a permanent basis. And a month or so after that, I sat down with the president of the division, the person who was ultimately responsible for making that hiring decision to not give both roles to me, but actually bring someone from the outside in. And I asked him, I said, Ted, I really felt like I was the guy for this role, and I thought I delivered enough to prove it. Can you just share why you didn't give it to me? And he said, Kyle, you never asked for help. The results were not good, and you made more excuses that because it's new and you're turning things around, and some of those things were true. But at the end of the day, I was ignorant. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was just trying to finesse my way through it. And he called me out for it. So the biggest lesson for me is when you're underwater, when you're struggling, when you feel like you just don't have all the answers, raise your hand and ask for help. Now, again, I'm not naive. There's some environments where that is a sign of weakness and it's not received well and it won't go well. Then I think the bigger question is this the kind of place I need to be? And is this the place that I want to spend, so many waking hours for the next several years?
I mean, as you were explaining that, like not asking for help, I thought immediately of just about like a star hockey player, like the #1 draft pick, just refusing to pass. Right, just like not passing the puck and going for the shot every time.
Yeah, well, I think it's here's an interesting stat, and I may botch it, but when you bring sports into it, I can't help myself.
All right, let's go.
Prior to the Bulls and Michael Jordan winning their first title, Jordan was in the league for 6 years. He led the league in scoring 2 or 3 of those years. He was an MVP 1 or 2 of those years, defensive all-star every one of those years, I think, except one maybe, but still couldn't win a championship. the first year the Bulls won a championship, the first of their two three-peats,
Mm-hmm.
the year that the first championship, his scoring average went down, his assists went up. He didn't win most valuable player. He got it in the finals.
That's
My
when he
point
got.
is the individual accolades and his individual performance was actually down in the first year of their championship run compared to the previous season. So I think that goes to show you it requires more than just one person, even the best of all time, to deliver excellence on a team basis.
Yeah, he got, what was it, Scottie Pippen and
Yeah, Scottie Pippen.
Larry
Steve Kerr,
Bird.
by the way, is coach of the Golden State Warriors
Yeah.
now. He averaged 4 points a game before joining the Bulls, and then he literally won a championship at the buzzer.
Sometimes you just need the right people to not even just like, to help you realize your potentials.
That's it. You said it, brother.
So now what called you to write a book? What made you decide that writing a book was the next step?
Yeah, so I led a certain way for 20 plus years and found myself becoming really apathetic. Just didn't want to be who I was in the corporate world anymore. I lost, cost me a marriage. My health was in really bad shape, and I was just at my wit's end. I left corporate America and and it just really made a promise to myself that if I were to go back in, it would only be under the premises that I could lead with complete autonomy, because I wanted to lead in a way that I had not led before. And I wanted to I wanted to be different, do something different. You know, that old saying, if you want something, if you want the same results, do the same thing. If you want to see something different, you got to do something different.
It's
So
definition of insanity.
right on. Yep. So I got a chance to take on a role where I would be leading 14,000 people, 11 locations. And I was told that I had a chance to do it in my own way. I could be pretty autonomous. And the night before I was going to meet with this group of leaders, it's when I created I was like 60 days in the job, and we called these leaders in, 40 or 50 people from the organization, all descended into Lawrence, Kansas, where it was my chance to set the table for the team. Here's what we're going to do. Here's who we are. Here's how we're going to be known. It's kind of a Braveheart moment for me. And that was the night before, was when I created the 10 We's, the principles. What unfolded next, Mike, is really almost fairy tale. Like the results, the business results that we drove reached unprecedented levels. The transformation that I saw in leaders, bosses becoming leaders, a group of people really becoming a team. By the way, they still use this is 2017. They still use the 10 We's as their cultural manifesto. All their performance evaluations revolve around the 10 We's. They have the 10 We Awards. So those principles changed this organization, while at the same time changed several lives, including my own. Well, I had an opportunity for a much bigger job, and I thought, well, if I could drive another transformation like this one, it would be, a real feather in my cap and find me, very, 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 very fulfilled. So I left, took on this big role, and the principles came with me, and I encountered an organization that said they were ripe for change, but they weren't. And I ran uphill, what felt like uphill, for about a year, and just couldn't do it anymore. So I left corporate America, sat on the sideline. I had a non-compete, so I had to leave, stay on the bench. Like I couldn't go back into that field for 15-ish months, something like that. And my phone started to ring with other job opportunities, and I was at a crossroads. Do I want to go back into corporate America and lead a transformation, or do I want to maybe start my own thing? And when I was kind of contemplating my next move, I started to get phone calls from that original organization. And I'll never forget, it was a guy named Drex. Drex Fitz. Why am I blanking on his name? Drex Fitzwallen. I'm drawing a blank on his name, his last name. He called me and he said, yeah, Drex. Yeah. Give me a second. I'm going to get that right, because he's actually a friend of mine, and I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Drex Fitzwater.
There you go.
Drex called me and was like, you got to write a book. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, the principles. If you are who you say you are, and you believe in these principles and what you've done with them and what they've done for you, then you need to get this out there. So I slept on it for about a month, never decided that I wanted to do it. Didn't tell anybody I was even contemplating it, until one night I just walked in and told my wife. I said, I'm going to write a book. It became a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller. It was a #1 on Amazon in 9 different categories. what started as a passion project, we just passed 10,000 units sold.
Exciting.
So it's the most humbling and rewarding thing I've ever done. One of the hardest things I've ever done as well.
Yeah, that's incredible. And
Thank you.
I guess who should consider reading your book? Who's it for?
Brother, if you would ask me that question a year ago, my answer would be slightly different than it is now. And I'll give you why. I'll give you the answer and why. The initial intention was for the book to be for anyone that wanted to be the leader they never had. They wanted to find fulfillment. They want to find their path to making an impact, which I think all of us at the end of the day, yeah, we got to make money. We have commitments. We got to pay our bills. I'm not naive to that, but I think people want to belong to something, and they also want to contribute to something, and they want to find fulfillment and connection with those that they do it with. So the book was for anyone who was lacking in those areas and wanted to reconnect and find that passion and fulfillment that they deserve. The reason the answer is different now is I've heard from quite literally hundreds of readers, both through DMs, emails, but then also after leaving stage when I give a keynote. The principles are resonating in people's personal lives. I had a guy tell me, it's been several months now, that the principles, the 10 W's, changed how he is raising his children, which is the most humbling, I have chills now just saying it, thing that I can think for. So it's also, they can be used as a code for life, not just in the business world.
Yeah. That's exciting, man. I haven't read it yet, but I do intend to, especially now after speaking with you. All the authors that come on here, I try to read their books as quickly as possible. After, actually, I have a couple flights coming up that's going to be perfect for that.
There you go.
So I'm going to put the link below. Is Amazon the best spot to get the book?
Yeah, it's available everywhere.
Do you have an
Barnes and
Audible?
Noble, Target, Amazon's probably the easiest way to get it for sure.
Do you have an audiobook?
I do have an audiobook. I narrated the audiobook. I actually, believe it or not, I think the audiobook is better. I can't explain why, but I think anytime you can hear the reader in his or her own voice with their own inflection, with their passion behind it, it just seems to resonate more with me.
Well, I mean, we have we're a podcast, right? So we have a lot of audio listeners who also do a lot of audiobooks. So it's a natural fit, right? So I'll throw the Audible link below for that. And dude, congratulations on the book and your success. And it was great talking to you. I really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah,
thanks, Mike. You're doing really important work. And anytime I get a chance to kind of help spread my message on a platform as cool as yours, I want to take advantage of that. So heartfelt thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of small business owners need a lot of help. And so that's what we're here for.
Right on.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.